totaling up damage from 4 tornadoes Sunday as the federal government talks about making it harder for states to get reimbursed for those kinds of cleanups. Republican plans to cut food benefits could strain food banks already seeing increased demand. Aurora can't rebuild a crumbling rec center for fear a plane will crash land on it. For real.
You're saying, no, we can't build it. Well, then help us out in some fashion.
And a long walk across America in memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
And we're trying to bring back the true meaning of Memorial Day.
Tonight on Next.
All Coloradans are safe and accounted for after tornadoes that damaged dozens of homes in Adams, Arapahoe, and Elbert counties yesterday. It's a reminder, though, as the recovery begins, that the federal government plans to make it harder for states to get disaster assistance. Tornado touched down just before 2 p.m. yesterday in the town of Bennett. Adams County Sheriff's investigators say at least 17 buildings, including 6 houses outside Bennett, were damaged.
Your whole life flushed down the toilet. Everything I've worked for and saved and collected is pretty much junk.
19 buildings were damaged by a tornado near Elizabeth in Elbert County. Much of that damage is in the Elkhorn neighborhood, where today neighbors were collecting donations for their families facing a cleanup.
People haven't eaten since yesterday or slept, so I'm loading my car and taking supplies around that all the neighbors have donated.
Local and state emergency workers tally up the damage before submitting an estimate of uninsured losses to FEMA. We've talked about the proposal that's currently being considered by the Trump administration that would quadruple the threshold for states to receive federal aid. That would shift the financial burden for disasters to states and counties. Earlier this month, Colorado's emergency management director said that would bust the state's budget. Republicans' plans to cut food benefits for low-income families have food banks in Colorado concerned, as they already see need rising. Our Angeline McCall reports from Broomfield.
Volunteers can stock shelves, but can't help alleviate all the worry about where the next meal will come from.
Yeah, our participants are feeling higher levels of anxiety and stress in thinking about losing benefits. Any amount of benefit loss is going to create a domino effect.
Tangi Lancaster with Broomfield Fish hears the concerns every day as Congress considers passing a bill that would cut SNAP benefits by roughly $300 billion over the next 10 years. The same bill would also cut Medicaid benefits.
And so there's just a whole lot of concerns around what the costs will be going forward.
Roughly 6 out of 10 people who rely on Broomfield Fish are on either Medicaid or SNAP, according to Executive Director Dana Scott.
We all are likening this to another full-time job, having to navigate a lot of the policies that are coming down the pike.
Meaning she's watching closely what will come, knowing the food bank will not be receiving $100,000 in August as part of a USDA grant.
And we use those funds specifically to supplement with things like fresh produce, meat, eggs, dairy. Those are the things that really help people have nutritious meals.
It hurts when they already have a deficit, meaning more food gets distributed every week than they bring in.
And we're worried that people are going to skip meals so they can save money for rent or other expenses.
Scott says some are already on such a tight budget, they'll have to make decisions between food or other basic needs if public benefits are reduced.
I think you have to look at the big picture, and you have to understand that folks are already doing magical things with very limited funds.
Dana worries the biggest impact will be on kids. They served 15,000 people last year. Half of those, Kyle, were children.
And I think so many of these families are going to be impacted, right, are going to potentially lose federal resources from a couple of different programs that have some overlap, don't have some overlap. So this might not be the only thing that those families are losing.
Right. A lot of people don't realize, so in several states, including Colorado, when you apply for SNAP, it's actually on the same application as when you apply for Medicaid. And so changes to policy, let's say there's a change in this program versus this one, it might actually impact both. And so families who rely on different systems, different programs, of course, they're feeling like potentially they're risking kind of a double whammy, right?
Yep. All of this is being negotiated, talked about in Congress. We'll continue to follow that, as well as the local impact. Angeline, thank you. A shooting in Aurora focuses our attention tonight on how Colorado's Make My Day law works. This is the law that gives Coloradans the right to use deadly force against an intruder under some very specific circumstances. It protects people wherever they are living, where they're dwelling at the moment, so a house or a hotel room or an RV. It does not apply in, say, a detached garage. That appears to be what happened with the shooting in Aurora. Early this morning, a man shot and seriously wounded someone who broke into the garage of his home on Moline Street. According to police, the homeowner was alerted to the break-in by some newly installed surveillance cameras. Police say he confronted this intruder and eventually shot him after an altercation. 9 News legal analyst Scott Robinson says the word detached, right? When we talk about a detached garage, that is significant because a detached garage does not count as a dwelling under Colorado's Make My Day law, which allows people to shoot if they believe that somebody is a dangerous intruder in their home.
Dwelling means just that. It can be a pup tent. It could be an RV if you're living in it. It can be a jail cell, but it can't be a detached garage, a shed, a porch, a stoop. It has to be where an individual is in fact dwelling.
So the Make My Day law might not apply here, but that doesn't mean that the homeowner doesn't have a legal defense. That person could also make just a simple self-defense argument. It's a higher bar, but it might apply in this case. Aurora police tell us at this point they don't anticipate charges being filed against that homeowner, but ultimately it's up to the Arapahoe County District Attorney to make that decision. So there's a danger zone where military jets take off and land at Buckley Space Force Base in Aurora. That accident potential zone limits development in Aurora, including in the area where we told you a long ago swingers club turned city rec center is about to close because the building's crumbling. This is important because the rec center cannot be rebuilt in place for fear that someday a plane might drop out of the sky onto it. Our Marshall Zellinger explains.
Beck can be seen right through those flagpoles to the right of the memorial there.
From the Colorado Freedom Memorial in Aurora, you can see the soon-to-be-closed Beck Recreation Center.
This is okay, but not over there.
Where Councilman Steve Sundberg is standing, a new visitor center is planned for the Colorado Freedom Memorial.
And it's just right outside this accident protection zone for the flight path of the base.
The Buckley APZ, Accident Potential Zone, is a boundary that limits development just in case of an aircraft crash around the Buckley runways. The APZ designation limits development that has more than 50 residents or regular visitors per acre. It limits development that requires utilities that can't be disrupted for an extended period of time, like phone or gas service. And it limits development if there are kids or elderly or people who can't get away from an emergency on their own. The Beck Rec Center that is closing has 2 preschool classrooms, but because the rec center was here before the regulations, it got to stay. It just can't be rebuilt.
You might have a C-130 coming at you this way, or a couple of F-16s, and they want some little bit of elbow room in case one goes down, apparently.
This location is now elbowed out. The city does not yet know if or when it will rebuild the only rec center in Northeast Aurora. There's a feasibility study underway, which includes trying to figure out how to pay for a new one.
Is the federal government, can they kick in? Can they chip in through grant monies, perhaps? That'd be nice. You're saying, no, we can't build it. Well, then help us out in some fashion.
At a time when the federal government is slashing expenses, Sundberg sees this zone as a potential for some cash.
I think I might try and link arms with Congressman Crow on this one and see if we can pull some strings.
The office of Democratic Congressman Jason Crow will get back to me tomorrow on if that's even a thing. Could federal money pay for a new rec center because of Department of Defense regulations that were enacted after the rec center was built and has to go down?
This is interesting stuff, Marshall. I mean, but as you rightly point out, obviously, there are cuts being made to a number of areas in the federal budget, but defense spending is something the Trump administration has shown a willingness to spend on, but might that trickle all the way down to defense spending for a rec center in Aurora, Colorado?
Sundberg told me that he thought 20 years ago Navy SEALs used the pool at Beck Rec Center to train, and he wasn't quite sure if any of the military members use that rec center or perhaps have kids in that preschool that could make a connection to say, not only are your regulations keeping us from building it there, but you also had members that used it, thus justifying why you should spend some money on the new one.
Well, that's a bit of a stretch. If you have an even older story about physical exercise that you enjoyed at that property, keep that story to yourself. We are only soliciting stories from the rec center era onward. You don't have to respond to that, Marshall. You don't have to respond to that at all. Thank you, sir. So the governor's recent threat to withhold funding from cities that don't fall in line with state housing laws could end up backfiring, because today some of those cities sued to toss out the housing laws altogether. Aurora, Arvada, Glendale, Greenwood Village, Lafayette, and Westminster, in alphabetical order, are suing the state over 2 Democrat-backed housing bills that passed last year. One of the bills would prohibit local governments from enforcing minimum parking requirements at multifamily housing, as in got to have this many spaces for each unit. The other bill, one of the governor's big priorities in 2024, requires some communities on the Front Range to update zoning to allow denser housing near public transit. On Friday, Democratic Governor Jared Polis signed an executive order threatening to withhold up to $100 million in state funding for communities that don't come in line with the law. The governor says the lack of affordable housing is a matter of statewide concern. That is specifically chosen language. The lawsuit claims those housing decisions fall under the state's constitutional home rule protections. That allows cities and counties to have the final say on issues of local concern. Northwest Colorado is going to be more prepared to handle wildfires thanks to you. Thanks to the more than $35,000 you just raised for a nonprofit that is helping homeowners in the Steamboat area prepare their properties, prepare them to be the place where firefighters can make a successful stand against a big wildfire. The Routt County Wildfire Mitigation Council will use your donations to buy and set up a new program so they can do property-by-property fire mitigation plans and to expand their work to meet demand in Routt County. We are now just 2 weeks away from marking 5 years of your weekly Word of Thanks microgiving. I am pretty sure that next week is when we will reach $15 million in total donations. You built that. Week by week, cause by cause, $5 donation by $5 donation, all across Colorado. I invite you to email me any ideas for future microgiving campaigns. You can reach me at next@9news.com or text NEXT 303-871-1491. Scooter riders have been going wild on Denver's sidewalks. City leaders want to motivate them to keep it on the streets.
Where we've been, we've run across these families that have this kind of loss, and we just want to make sure that they know that we're not going to forget.
And have Memorial Day, literally carrying on the memory of lost service members. Next. New rules are likely coming for e-scooter riders in Denver. Only took thousands of injuries to prompt this. Tonight, City Council's voting on an ordinance to add parking requirements along with technology to enforce the sidewalk riding ban. People took more than 6 million scooter and e-bike trips in Denver last year. That, of course, plus the clutter of abandoned bikes and scooters on sidewalks, blocked ramps for accessibility, nearly 2,000 crash-related ER visits. Riding on the sidewalk is already banned in Denver, but of course people just do it anyway. Under the proposal, e-scooter and e-bike companies would be required to install technology to deter people from riding on a sidewalk, like adding a fee or maybe a little automated message that says, "Exit the sidewalk, exit the sidewalk." There would also be designated parking spots in busy parts of downtown like Union Station. Most of those rules would go into effect next July. Parking requirements wouldn't start until 2027.
We have a beautiful afternoon along the Front Range, much calmer and drier than yesterday, less spin and instability in the atmosphere, but not entirely quiet. There are a few showers to the south, while areas to the north like Fort Collins enjoying bright blue skies and sunshine. The system that brought the wave of severe weather brought in cooler air. Temperatures today in the 60s, about 10 degrees cooler than average. This is the parent low here. Counterclockwise flow bringing in additional moisture tonight. The heaviest showers are to the south, and the severe weather is off to the east. There's a bit of foothill snow and I-70 snow, but all advisories for snow and travel have canceled out. So the trend will be for drier weather and clearing skies tonight. You wake up to a sunny and warmer day tomorrow. Temperatures slide out of the 60s into the 40s overnight tonight. And then tomorrow we go into the 70s. We have quiet weather for the next few days. Friday, sunshine and 80s, but Memorial Day weekend, a return of thunderstorms both Sunday and Monday. We'll be tracking the timing and impact of those, and we'll have the latest for you, of course, right here on the networks of 9 News.
May I make a recommendation? Something that didn't come from our news team, but I think is worth your time. The news over the weekend that former President Joe Biden has a serious and incurable form of prostate cancer has led to prayers and well wishes for his health, but also questions about whether Biden just learned about this. There are plenty of those questions, and not unfair ones, given the Biden administration hiding the extent of his physical and mental decline from the public while he was in office. But I found an article today by a writer who is also a physician with some pretty interesting backstory. This is in Stat News. It's by a doctor named Lawrence Altman, a doc who is researching and writing a book on how political leaders' health is monitored, treated, how that news is shared with the public. His big line takeaway is that he does not see a smoking gun to suggest that doctors either mishandled Biden's health or that there is an obvious sign of a cover-up. But he talks about the delicate dance involved in testing, but not over-testing high-profile political leaders. To what extent do you go looking for a problem in their health? And then when do you disclose it to the public? How do you go about doing so? He reaches back generations to talk about American presidential and medical history. You find that full article linked on our social media accounts and on our recommendation page on 9news.com. A month-long observance of Memorial Day comes to downtown Denver, where volunteers make sure that sacrifice is not forgotten. Long trip across America to honor our country's fallen stopped in Denver ahead of the Memorial Day weekend. Our Byron Reed was there.
Anyway, you said we're going up Colfax first.
Planning a journey takes some thought.
We'll go all the way to this intersection.
Yep.
And then
For John Colshine,
Yep.
the trip to Denver was a no-brainer.
We're one of 4 teams traveling across the country for the entire month of May, and we will converge in Dallas on Memorial Day weekend to continue this tradition that we started in 2011.
He's an ambassador with Carry the Load, a national nonprofit that's on a mission to remember our military veterans, first responders, and their families.
Specialist Patrick Brown, Sergeant Jamie Cox, Sergeant Calvin Morgan, and then Sergeant Ryan Smith. And I have the honor not only to carry them, but I'm walking with the 4 widows that they left behind.
As part of a month-long campaign leading up to Memorial Day.
Kind of brings me to tears too, just to see somebody that carried our husbands last year forward to Dallas to the Carry the Load event, and to meet him, that was really, really moving. And he's continuing to carry our men forward today at this event.
The group walked a 3-mile loop through downtown Denver, carrying the pictures and names of service members who made the ultimate sacrifice.
And we just want to make sure that that they know that we're not going to forget.
David Lindsay is with the nationwide events team for Carry the Load. He wants to make sure the names are not forgotten.
We're not going to condemn you if you don't remember Memorial Day, but just take a moment and remember those that have gone before us and have given that ultimate sacrifice, and just take a moment to remember what they've done for all of us.
Can't ask for a better day here in Denver.
The journey is Colshine's way to honor the fallen by walking each step with a purpose.
Each step is just a reminder of their sacrifice, and each step reminds me that the only reason I could take that step and that next step is because of their sacrifice.
Or next,
I look in the mirror every day and say, am I worthy of their sacrifice?
I'm Byron Reed.
We're back with your feedback next. Lisa on Threads writes in with appreciation for tonight's recommended read, said, thanks for sharing this. It was a great, reasonable read. Shirley writes in, a rec center can't be rebuilt because it could become a wrecked center. She says, a rare missed pun. That is good, Shirley. And I did miss that one. Nestor in North Glen, sounds like we're on talk radio now, says, I can't imagine how happy you are to cover a swingers story in a swingers sport coat. This is a swingers sport coat? I bought this used. Well, I imagine it probably got tossed clear of the action.